So you have to separate who are the winners, who are the trends, who you bet on. So even yesterday, when Nvidia is down on this news, that's a buying opportunity, because it really has nothing to do with Nvidia. We're talking about Intel and everything related to that trade, which is really legacy chip. So I think that's why we spend so much time trying to figure out who are the second, third, fourth derivatives of AI. And that's why every time the bears come out of hibernation mode, scare some, I think it actually creates opportunity in a lot of these names.
Wedbush analyst Dan Ives sees recent concerns over ASML as noise, emphasizing that AI-driven companies like Nvidia, Microsoft, and Amazon are the real growth opportunities. He views Intel's struggles as a signal of its lagging position in the AI race, and Nvidia's recent stock dip as a buying opportunity rather than a sign of risk for AI-centric tech. Ives remains optimistic that the AI-driven bull market has a long way to go, with key players like Nvidia, Microsoft, and Apple expected to keep advancing. He predicts this AI momentum will last into 2025 or beyond, as both consumer and enterprise applications for AI continue to expand and unlock new value. Despite ethical concerns around AI, such as its role in spreading misinformation, Ives sees the real impact as the influence AI will have on global perspectives and decision-making. He believes high valuations for AI leaders like Nvidia are justified in this new normal of tech innovation, seeing them as transformative forces poised to reshape industries.
At Wedbush. Dan, thanks as always for joining me. You must have been getting a lot of questions about ASML, what it means for the industry, what it means for your bullishness. Help us understand it from your perspective.
Yeah, I view it as noise, because ultimately that's the wrong side of the growth trade. I mean, look at Intel. If you looked up disaster in the dictionary, you see Intel's ticker. So the point is, to me, it's all, as we always talk about, right? It's all about being on the AI freight train, which is tied to Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple. I think AMD on the chip side as well, names like Palantir and others. But if you're in the right lane, going 40 miles an hour in a beat up minivan, you're going to have issues. And that's where I see ASML.
Taiwan Semi is out tomorrow, and so investors will have chance to take comfort as it of course does a lot of business with Nvidia and is a little bit more exposed to the winners. How, as an analyst, I mean, how much do you look at that ecosystem to decide what's going right in the AI trade?
Yeah, and look, that's why we've been Asia, twice in the last, call it 7 weeks. It's like you have to, they're not all winners.
And you're going to have on the consumer side hundreds of apps, a lot of them through Apple, that is how most consumers are going to interact with AI in a way that they couldn't even imagine today. Enterprises, same thing. As much as it's scary, sci-fi, 21st century, I think the reality is that enterprises are finding massive use cases, ROI, and that's why we believe there's a lot of these companies, $10 in earnings could be 14 to 15.
In terms of the advances that we could see, it raises a lot of questions when you talk about a leap from the kind of large language models that we're seeing now to this general intelligence. It raises the questions about whether artificial intelligence is advancing too fast for companies and people to keep up with, the moral questions as well. I wonder how, Gene, you think about some of those questions as a lot of these big tech companies do try to get to some of these massive leaps that used to be science fiction, but do seem like they're becoming that much closer to science fact.
Yeah, the numbers are supporting it just in terms of the breathtaking expansion and intelligence of these models. Just to put some perspective around it, OpenAI GPT-3 had about 120 billion parameters. They haven't given the numbers for 4.0, but it's estimated to be about 1 trillion. And that's kind of a simple way to think about how smart the model is to look at the number of parameters. And so think of this as it's over a period of a year, it's getting going almost a 10x improvement in intelligence. So these are kind of growth curves that are that just we haven't seen. Makes the internet growth look JV. And I think when it comes to the positives, Dan and I have talked about the benefits for companies to continue to build into this. And I think I appreciate your point about how can this be, what are the negative sides? And I would just, my view is this: you can debate a lot of angles around how can this be negative or positive. I think the one piece that cannot be debated is it's going to get harder for people to distinguish what is truth and fiction, and all the ramifications around that. I think you're going to see more tribalism. I think people, just because you're going to get progressively easier to get fed what you want to hear. And so I think that side's the most actually concerning part of me when just think about like global stability, is just how AI is going to be used to influence how people think. I'm not worried about robots shooting people up or anything like that. I think this is just about how AI influences how we think.
Now, I want to get deeper into those questions as we get deeper into the program. But Dan, just to close out this segment, I mean, we've seen these massive multiples for Nvidia and other companies like it in terms of, the levels, the valuations that they're trading at. Is that a new normal, these kinds of massive price to earnings ratios that we're seeing for companies like Nvidia?
I mean, that's been what we've talked about. It's a new norm. I think how many have missed this, they go back to their historical DCF spreadsheets while they're in their hibernation mode as bears. It's a new era.
Well, let's talk about the bulls and this idea that maybe they're already there. In fact, there was a Bank of America survey, they do the fund manager survey, the Mag 7 for, I think it's the 19th consecutive month. That's the most crowded trade. And you can say that maybe that's contrarian, but another consequence of that is, are there dip buyers? Because everybody is already all in.
Look, you have $7 trillion on the sidelines. And I mean, I could tell you every day, the skepticism I see globally from investors, valuation, is the trade done? Is AI hype? It's still there. So I'm not saying it's not a crowded trade, but I believe a year, like I said, like 6 months from now, $3-4 trillion market caps will be the narrative. Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft. And I think that's all driven by, we're only in the second inning of the game from a hockey perspective, the early first period. In terms of where I see this AI trade going, which I think tech bull market roars well into 2025, potentially 2026.
Well,
It's 9 p.m. in the AI party that's going to 4 a.m. The point is, this is just a near-term pullback that I believe is going to be short-lived. I think a year from now, we're looking at $3-4 trillion market caps. Godfather of AI, Jensen Nvidia will be one of them, along with Apple and Microsoft.
let's talk price target then. Why not be, I guess, more aggressive with yours and where it can go? What's keeping you from being a little bit more unrestrained?
Look, the bull case is 200. And I think when you actually look at where this all plays out, this is the start now of the monetization that's going to continue for Jensen and Nvidia. And I think it's all now going to be about the second, third, fourth derivatives of AI playing out over the next 6 to 9 months.
Let's talk a little bit more about NVIDIA, because obviously there's been so much attention on the AI chip darling. Dan, you've called Jensen Huang, the CEO, the godfather of AI, but godfathers often have targets on their backs. I mean, how big a target is NVIDIA right now when it comes to the overall chip space?
Look, they're a target, but it's their world and everyone else is paying rent. In terms of where we are, I mean, they're chips, they're GPUs, and we've seen this across the board in our trips to Asia. It's the new oil, the new gold. And at the top of the mountain, it's the godfather of AI, Jensen Nvidia, in that Mount Rushmore of AI, along with Nadella and others that want to join. But they're miles ahead of the competition. It'll ebb and flow. A year from now, I think we're looking at $3-4 trillion market caps. Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia. And as Gene's talked about throughout the year, it's forest for the trees. You don't get too caught up with sometimes the gyrations week to week, quarter to quarter. It's where this is all going.
Dan, where do you see the trajectory for NVIDIA? I mean, you've talked a lot about how the run seems like it has legs. What turns NVIDIA from the kind of growth that we've seen over the last several months to something of more stability?
The use cases are just starting. So when you look at numbers, the street is still behind where the demand and where numbers actually go. So we could go through intra-quarter people saying it's hype and stocks sell off, but it all comes down to demand. And we are still from a baseball perspective, we're in the top of the second, bottom of the first in terms of where this is all heading. And they're the only show in town in terms of those chips. That's why I believe this is one where they continue to defy, show numbers that I think are jaw droppers. And now the second, third, fourth derivatives hit across the rest of tech.
How do you think about that piece of it, the general intelligence piece of it, relative, or just in terms of the applications that could present themselves and the opportunity for wealth creation around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, Gene, I think from everything, all the work we've done around the world, we think about 60% of data that's never been able to be cracked or used by enterprises and ultimately by consumers is now going to get unlocked.
Dan Ives remains bullish on the future of AI, seeing key companies like Nvidia, Microsoft, and Apple as dominant players in a growing market. While he acknowledges the concerns surrounding the AI boom, such as ethical implications and high valuations, he believes these companies are poised for long-term success, with AI continuing to unlock massive opportunities in both consumer and enterprise sectors. The ongoing AI revolution, Ives argues, is only in its early stages, and those who are invested in the right companies are well-positioned for significant gains. As these technologies evolve, the market will continue to see disruptive growth, and AI will play a central role in shaping the future of global industries. How do you think AI will reshape industries in the next 5 years? Are you concerned about the ethical implications of AI's rapid growth?